right. So, I did say that we were not going to be doing a Scott video today. That is true. But I have a good, because we've been doing Scott videos every day. So I want to change it up a little bit, but still try to keep it in the same vein. So we're going to do, yes, we're going to do, we're going to do the Fat Electrician. We're going to do the Fat Electrician talking about the mail truck. You guys have recommended this to me. I didn't watch it, so that's why but I said, we'll do this one. So no Scott tonight, we're going to do Fat Electrician instead, because you guys have been recommending the fuck out of this to me. So hopefully I'm going to be able to do good commentary to this, because when I've watched his videos before, I've watched one of his videos before, trying to figure out how the hell I could pause without interrupting his flow, because he talks very fast. He talks very quickly, so hopefully I'll be able to get some good commentary without interrupting his flow. This is the first time I'm reacting to him, so let's go.
Every single time I try to make a funny, lighthearted video, it gets completely unhinged. Today,
already an excellent start.
We're talking about Northrop Grumman's most iconic vehicle of all time. Every aviation nerd just sat forward in their chair, because if I don't pick their favorite Northrop Grumman plane, they're gonna roast me in the comments section, because if you don't know, Northrop Grumman is a defense contractor primarily known for making warplanes, and they've created some of the most iconic and effective warplanes the world has ever seen. Some of those planes include the F-4F Wildcat,
okay.
the F-
Oop, hang on, I want to see what they have to say about
the world has ever seen. Some of those planes.
Alright, carrier base, introduced 1940s, top speed 318, not bad, over 1,300 enemies shot down. Okay, impressive little bird.
Planes include the F-4F Wildcat, the F-6.
The F-6F Hellcat, carrier base, 1940s, 318, 1,300 enemies. Okay, also, kinda sort of reminds me, I think it's the Mustang that it reminds me of, although the Mustang I think had, the wings were a little bit stubbier.
F Hellcat, America's gun with wings.
Really? They did the A-10 Thunderbolt. They did the Warthog. No shit. Wow. Okay, I'm impressed. I did not know. Close air support, yes. Introduced in 1977. I did not know the A-10 was that old. I did not know it came out in 77. Primary gun for 8,000 sorties in the Gulf War, and yes, it's still in service today, and is the only plane in the United States military that was literally built around the gun. The plane was built around the gun. And holy shit, what a gun it is.
The A-10 Warthog, the B-21...
the B-2 Stealth. Really? Grumman built the Stealth? Holy shit. 77? Right, knew about that. 40,000 pounds of ordnance. It's very expensive. It can do bombing runs from 50,000 feet. That is a high-flying bird. Yeah, this one, we knew about this one being when we were, when we watched the video on the F-117, we did a little looking into the B-2, because I thought that I was thinking the B-2, went into production and went into service before the F-117. The F-117 was a result of the B-2, when it was actually the reverse. It was actually the reverse of the B-2 went into production probably because of the success of the F-117 in terms of its stealth capabilities. And Ezra Lane for the... Oh, cool! Is that... Okay. That's a plane hub. Hush, Pluto. Hush.
One stealth bomber, and its replacement, the B-20...
Okay, so this is the one that we were looking at, the B-21 Raider, which is still in flight. It's still in testing. Okay, yeah. It's the same thing, just with updated, probably with updated aeronautics. Maybe they did some updating under the coding, the anti-radar coding, probably better engines. So yeah, but obviously they kept the design, which is obviously a good design.
One Raider, But all of these pale in comparison to Northrop Grumman's most iconic and durable vehicle of all time. A vehicle that was designed to perform its tasks swiftly, despite snow,
It's not the Tomcat, is it?
or rain, or heat, or gloom of night, the LLV, the Long Life Vehicle, aka the mail truck.
Okay.
You're not serious. You've got to be shitting me.
I shot down 3 MiGs on one of those.
Yeah, the same people that made like half the planes in US military history also made your friendly neighborhood mail truck. I can only imagine that the US Postal Service.
You know what? That's not such a crazy thought. For God's sake, GE made the gun on the A-10. You know, GE, the washing machine company, made the main gun on the A-10 Warthog. So, to me, that's not a shocking revelation that they made the truck. No, it's GE. GE is the company that I don't know if they manufactured or came up with the cannon on the A-10. Not LG. It was GE.
Service put out a memo like, hey, we're looking for a vehicle to help deliver packages, and the US government was like, oh, package, payload, potato, same thing. Call up Northrop Grumman. They're really good at delivering that type of stuff. Okay, Northrop Grumman's used to putting warheads on foreheads, now they're putting parcels on porches. It's a...
You know what, Pluto? I heard about that and I couldn't believe it. I heard about that and I could not believe it. I'm not gonna say the name on stream because I could potentially get in trouble for that, but yes, I was actually surprised to find that out myself.
The same thing. Now all I need is for Lockheed Martin to start making action figures and my life will be complete.
You put munitions, chips, and toys?
Standard issue is insufficient.
Okay, all jokes aside, I'm actually legitimately upset that this thing is named the LLV. I mean, it's made by Northrop Grumman, the makers of the F4F Wildcat and the F6F Hellcat, and you didn't name this the Mail Cat? Are you fucking kidding me?
Did you forget to do the ad?
No, I did the ad. Thanks for finally being in a YouTube video with a shirt on for once.
Hello? Is it a common thing for her to come into his videos topless? Is this a common thing I'm unaware of? Because goddamn.
Welcome.
Nice thong, Borat. This video is brought to you by Zydax. Custom gaming PCs. They're all made right here in America with American tech support. They can do any type of customization you want, or they have pre-built ones ready to ship right now. And then we have one of our newest sponsors, Zaka Life Recovery Balm. It's made right here in America, and it's the best thing I've found for aches, pains, and athletic injuries. It blows every other topical treatment
seems
I've ever
pretty
tried
funny,
out of
house guest.
water. I'm gonna have both those sponsors and discount codes linked down below. Let's get back to the video. So after finding out that the mail truck that I've grown up with my entire life was actually made by Northrop Grumman, I decided, hey, I'm gonna make a video on this. This is gonna be hilarious. It's gonna be lighthearted. It's gonna be funny. It's gonna be great. So I started looking up the specs. I started looking up the history, how this came to be. And then I asked myself one simple question. Wait a minute. Why on earth is a defense contractor making this little tiny car when an automotive contractor probably could have done the same thing better and probably cheaper? And per usual, to absolutely nobody's surprise, it's because once again, the government ruins everything.
Yes, we do.
All right, so let's take
I mean, are we shocked by this? At all?
it from the top. Once upon a time in 1775, the United States Continental Congress says, hey, delivering mail is super duper important because we don't have email and phones and telegraphs yet, and delivering letters is the only way that we can communicate. So we need to establish a post office, and we're going to take one of our smartest founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin, and make him the first postmaster general to figure this entire thing out. Then the government pretty much immediately decides, hey, we want this to kind of be a government agency, but also we don't want to have to give it any tax money to be able to run itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it a legal monopoly. We're going to go ahead and say that the US Postal Service is the only entity that is legally allowed to deliver the mail. That way the US Postal Service is going to be guaranteed to get 100% of the business, so they're going to have enough money to be able to fund themselves and not have to rely on taxpayer money. And this is still going on to this day. This is a legally recognized and regulated monopoly. Buh! What about FedEx and UPS? Buh! That's actually a good question out of you for once. So the monopoly only applies to like letters and mail and shit like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, UPS and FedEx handle packages. They don't necessarily handle, like, actual documentation. The U.S. Postal Service will handle actual documentation versus packaging. So I was going to say that's an easy question to answer.
Packages are technically different and there's allowed to be commercial competition there. That's why UPS and FedEx primarily only deliver packages. Now, I say usually because there is an exception that if you have something of vital importance that needs to be like overnighted to somewhere immediately, you are allowed to use FedEx or USPS to ship that if it's of vital importance. And I know what you're thinking. It seems like there's a pretty...
Then that being said, USPS does have overnight services, which are going to be just as fast as UPS overnight services. And I gathered that based on the fact that he was holding a keyboard over his shoulder. I kind of gathered that that was kind of what it was based on. It was first time I saw it when I watched one of his other videos. I figured it was a quote unquote keyboard warrior. Pluto? I think it's still taught in the same way, where it is taught once and that's it. I think it is still taught once, probably in elementary, perhaps junior high school. It's probably taught once, just like, writing a check. It's taught once and then never again, and from there the kids just have to figure it out. Fortunately, with sending mail, it's pretty simple. You write your name and address you write your delivery name and address in the center. You write your name and address in the upper left, you stick a stamp on it, and you're done. Hi, iDad. Welcome back.
Big gray area there. I mean, who sets the criteria as to whether or not something is important enough to violate the U.S. Postal Service's legal monopoly and be able to use FedEx or UPS to send a letter or an important document? Well, obviously, that would be the U.S. Postal Service's in-house federal law enforcement agency, the Postal Inspectors. I'm not shitting you. The mailmen have their own federal law enforcement.
Oh, yeah. The postal inspectors are... they are a federal law enforcement agency. I've actually watched some documentaries on some of the cases that they've done. They will often work like fraud cases where the U.S. Postal Service is used to facilitate the fraud. My guess is when, you had the situations with the anthrax being delivered via envelope, I'm sure the Postal Inspector's Office was involved in that investigation. But yeah, I mean, it is a federal investigative service, just like the FBI, just like the DEA. Nope, they are a federal law enforcement agency. So, yeah.
Enforcement agency. I had no idea.
I'm not sure how he had no idea. It's not like the Postal Inspector Service is a secret. I mean, I suppose like they don't get much press, but I mean, I suppose that may be the reason why they don't get much press. There's no TV shows about them. So I guess maybe that's why you didn't know about them. Yeah.
Now, typically the postal inspectors are doing really great things, like making sure that people aren't sending bombs or drugs through the mail, or investigating people that have had their mail stolen, which, if you didn't know, is actually a federal crime. And back in the day in 1775, when the post office and the postal inspectors were founded, Congress levied the death penalty for stealing mail. And while that's all fine and dandy, once in a while the postal inspectors get a wild hair in their ass and they decide that they are going to enforce their legalized monopoly. For example, back in 1993, a big company called Equifax was using a private courier to deliver all of...
Okay, I'm surprised you said a big company named Equifax. For those who don't know, particularly if you are outside of the United States and Canada, Equifax is one of the three major credit reporting bureaus. When you get a credit check done in basically North America, your credit is run through your credit is checked through Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. They are the three major credit bureaus. So I'm surprised he's kind of glossing over that a little bit. And they're also a reason why, you know, American credit is a fucking joke because they need you to get credit for everything. But yeah, he's really kind of glossing over that a little bit. I'm actually surprised because that is a major staple of finance.
Get a wild hair in their ass and they decide that they are going to enforce their legalized monopoly. For example, back in 1993, a big company called Equifax was using a private courier to deliver all of their mail, not just their packages. And because of this, the US postal inspectors launched an armed raid of their company headquarters, determined that their mail wasn't important enough to be overnighted and that they were legally required to use the United States Postal Service, and then gave them a $30,000 fine. Yeah, if you live in America and you run a business and you decide that you don't like using the United States Postal Service and you're going to exclusively try to use like FedEx or UPS or something, there is a greater than 0% chance that armed mailmen in body armor will show up to your headquarters and raid your business, tell you that's illegal, and then give you a fine. Okay, do I want to talk shit right now because that seems absolutely insane and ridiculous? Yeah, a little bit.
And by the way, I can't remember if it was Equifax, Experian, or TransUnion many years ago. One or all three of them got majorly hacked and just threw the entire I think it might have been Experian, or sorry, I think it might have been Equifax that got hacked and all of their all of their data stolen. So that's not a good look for them. So it's yeah, Equifax, like the entire it was Equifax. Yeah, it was Equifax. Yeah, they got hacked and they got a whole shitload of customer data stolen. And bearing in mind, remember, Equifax is a credit checking bureau. Not federal, but they're a credit checking company. They are one of the three companies that say whether or not you have good enough credit to buy a house, to buy a car, to get internet service, because they do credit checks for that now. Like, if you get your identity stolen, it's these companies that fuck your life up for a decade or more while you try and fix it. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I don't doubt it. But it's like these are the companies that if you're the victim of identity theft and people use your identity for all sorts of fraudulent stuff, these companies, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, are the ones that you are going to be fighting with for years to try and recover your credit, because your credit has now gone through the floor and now you're fucked if you ever want to buy anything, on credit. It's these companies. That's why the whole credit thing in North America is just a steaming pile of shit. It's designed to basically fuck the average person. It's another system that allows rich people to do whatever the fuck they want, and it screws over the average person because these three companies say, we don't think you're good enough to have good credit. It's unfucking real.
Am I gonna? Absolutely not, because they know where I live, okay? I didn't know they existed until yesterday, and already Special Forces mailman is on the top of my list of people I'm not gonna fuck with. So everybody kind of already knows that being a mail carrier is a government job, but most people don't understand to the extent that the US Postal Service is its own government entity, so much so that it necessitates its own federal law enforcement agency. So going back to the Grumman mail cat and the actual physical transportation of the mail, it always just kind of went with the times. Back in the 1700s when they were founded, it was delivered on horseback. When cars came out and they became more and more common, the post office began using more and more cars. So the US Postal Service would just acquire whatever cars they needed whenever they needed them, and this went on for decades. But by the 1930s and 1940s, it was becoming a huge issue because the USPS had acquired a ton of different cars. They were all different makes, all different models. They all drove different. They all had different carrying capabilities. They all required different mechanics, different parts. It was a huge logistical nightmare for this.
Yeah, that may and this leading up to one company being the sole manufacturer makes perfect sense. If you have a hodgepodge of vehicles, it would be an absolute nightmare trying to maintain a fleet like that, because you need so many different parts. You need so many different potentially specialized mechanics. Yeah, it makes absolute perfect sense. It's just like police departments and federal law enforcement agencies only have certain vehicles. So that way it's easier to maintain the vehicles because they're all the same. Yeah. Makes perfect sense.
This enormous fleet of vehicles. As I'm sure you can imagine, it would be like 100 times easier if all of the vehicles in the US postal fleet were the same exact thing and all had the same capability, requiring the same replacement parts, the same type of mechanics, and you could teach all the postal carriers how to drive one vehicle and one vehicle only. So at the end of World War II, with hundreds of thousands of Americans returning home and looking for jobs, the United States Postal Service recognized a very unique opportunity with the Willys Motor Company Jeep. Because the Jeep was being used by the US military, there was already a ton being manufactured, and a lot of the people returning home from the military already knew how to drive it. There was a ton of people qualified to work on them mechanically, and there was a ton of excess parts around. And with the military downsizing, there was a huge surplus of them, so it was a perfect fit in pretty much every way. It is a rare case of the government doing something 100% right, and the United States Postal Service adopted the Jeep as their primary vehicle. And that worked for like 40 years, but as the US got bigger and bigger with more and more people, and people started sending more and more mail and more packages, the capacity that the Jeep could hold simply wasn't enough, and the United States Postal Service wanted something that was capable of carrying more mail. But you have to remember, this is a government agency, and they can't do anything simple when it comes to getting new equipment, so they can't just go over to like Ford or Chevy and be like, hey, build me a new mail truck. No, they have to figure out the exact specifications that they're looking for, and then they have to send it out to all the government contractors so that they can all
in triplicate with 10 different signatures from 10 different authorities who have all done their own specific tests and have peer-reviewed studies that all say that this is how it's supposed to go when they wish upon a star in the second house of Jupiter's ascending through the plane of existence. Then you can do it.
I'll put a bid in on it. That way the government contractors can come in, do the exact bare minimum, and make a ton of money. I mean, let's just look at the LLV, for example. They wanted this thing to weigh a maximum of 3,000 pounds. Guess how much it weighs? Exactly 3,000 pounds. They wanted it to be able to carry a minimum of 1,000 pounds. Guess how much it can carry? Exactly 1,000 pounds on the dot. They wanted it to be this tall, this wide, this long, and Grumman came along and said, dope, I'm gonna make a metal fucking rectangle exactly that size, throw an engine and some wheels on it, and call it a good day. They literally made a mobile filing cabinet, which, to be fair, in hindsight,
I swear, his rapid fire delivery gets me. Yeah, it is. Government, yeah. I mean, government has been has mutated over the last 200 plus years to become stupidly unnecessarily complicated, and no one's gonna fix it. No one's gonna uncomplicate it because complicated means easier to hide shit. Simple as that. If it's complicated, it's a hell of a lot easier to hide something you don't want people to see.
after serving in the military, I should have been able to recognize that the mail truck that I grew up with was absolutely a military-grade piece of equipment built by the cheapest bidder. I mean, this is what I drove in the military, the Humvee ambulance, and I mean, the similar...
No, he was a medic! I didn't know he was... Wait, yes I did. Yes, I knew he was a medic. I remember reading about that. Yeah, the Humvees... Oh yeah, they are definitely a piece of work. I mean, this is like the suspension on these is you are bouncing all over the damn place. Imagine trying to transport a patient in critical condition in one of these things. You'd be lucky for that patient to survive after bouncing around everywhere in the back of this thing. Yeah, and you know, I've talked to people that have worked on them. They're a nightmare to work on. Even just like if you're not a mechanic, just like inspecting and trying to maintain them, something is always broken on these things. You can never keep them in 100% operational condition. Something's always broken.
Similarities are there. I mean, they both look like the blueprints for them were drawn by a third grader that didn't know how to draw a car yet, and then the 3D renderings were made out of fucking Legos. Now, to be fair though, while I have driven the Humvee ambulance and it's a miserable experience, I've never driven a mail truck, so I don't actually know what that's like. So I turned to the internet because surely some mailman has written something somewhere on the planet that is going to tell me what that experience is like, and here's what I found. Quote, regular driving around town was pretty bearable, but driving the LLV on the highway shouldn't even be legal. I've had to do it a few times, and those times were probably the most terrified I've been while operating any motor vehicle.
Wow.
Riding a motorcycle over 100 miles an hour? No problem. Merging onto the highway in a mail truck? You couldn't pay me to do it again. The sluggish acceleration, deafening noise, and harsh vibration were all bad enough, but knowing the body of the vehicle would crush like a soda can in an accident is what made it such a frightening experience. Nope, I was right, because that is to a T what it's like to drive a military ambulance. I got one of those things going 75 one time thanks to an enormous hill, and it felt like I was re-entering the Earth's atmosphere as everything that wasn't strapped down rattled out of place and started falling to the floorboard. Now, I don't know this for certain, but
I got a funny story that was told to me. Someone I knew, told me that when they were in the military, they were on a Humvee, and they were in a two vehicle like team, and they were doing a night drive. So you're driving at night. They were using night vision to see. And the guy I knew, he was in the Humvee in the back. And as they were driving, oh, hi ACDC Waffle, thank you for joining us. So as they were driving along, that this guy told me that he was watching the Humvee in front of him, as it was going through the night vision, when all of a sudden the Humvee just literally disappeared. And of course he was like, what the actual fuck? This thing disappeared. And as it turns out, there was a huge, like, tank pit or something that the driver in the Humvee in front of them did not see. And I'll use my cursor here too, if you can see the cursor. The Humvee was just driving, and went boom, straight down into the tank ditch. Like, all four wheels, just boom. And just went right into the tank ditch. And they had like a gunner on the 50 cap in the turret, and that gunner went face first into the 50 when they hit. And boy, was he messed up. I'm not sure what injuries he might have sustained, but I was told that he had a messed up face after that. Scared out of mind when he stopped and parked some beat. Turns out, due to the knots they were using, only he didn't notice they would have driven. Oh wow! He stopped because the nods went out, but thank God he did because it would drive. Oh jeez! God, that was lucky. Wow. That would terrify me. I mean, if I was in that position, I'm not sure if I'm not sure I'd ever be comfortable driving one of those at night off-road ever again after something like that. Wow. Scary shit.
driving a Humvee or an LLV really fast kind of seems like anal beads, you know?
Yeah.
The faster you go, the bumpier it gets, and if you go too fast, there's gonna be shit everywhere.
What did he just say? Brian, this does not seem appropriate to watch in front of the baby.
Now, to be fair to the Grumman male cat, is it a turd? Absolutely, but it is really tough. Because here's some of the testing criteria the LLV had to be able to meet before it would be adopted as the USPS postal vehicle. We
Well, I always thought it was kind of standard practice that when you park a Humvee or any military vehicle, that you had someone out of the vehicle ground guiding you whenever you went to park a vehicle. I thought that was standard practice. Is it not? Or was it not at the time? I mean, maybe at the time there wasn't standard practice, perhaps. Yee. Okay. Okay. So I'm guessing that it probably got adopted military wide, probably not long after when I guess maybe your dad and maybe several others had this kind of experience, and so word went up the chain, and the military at large said, okay, this is happening too often. We've got to start making it standard practice that when you go to park one of the vehicles, you have a ground guide out because this is not like parking a car. That'd be my guess. Eh,
The LLV had to be able to meet before it would be adopted as the USPS postal vehicle. We have drive 5,760 miles at 55 miles an hour with 0 malfunctions and 0 broken parts. Drive 11,520 miles at 45 miles an hour on gravel with 0 malfunctions and
Yeah.
0 broken parts. Drive 2,880 miles, stopping every 250 feet, accelerating to at least 15 miles an hour in between stops with 0 malfunctions and 0 broken parts. Drive 960 miles on cobblestone, 0 broken parts. Drive 960 miles over potholes, ensuring that every single wheel hits the pothole at least 35,000 times with 0 broken parts. To accomplish that, they took a Chevy S10 chassis, shortened the wheelbase so it could have a tighter turn radius, and then made the entire body of the vehicle out of aluminum so it couldn't rust. So at a minimum, at least it's tough. Despite the fact that it is really tough, it is finally time to start replacing the United States Postal Service carrier vehicle because, well, the engine that they put in these things is an engine from the 1970s known as the Iron Duke, and this bad boy's getting like 9 miles to the gallon. This is the same engine they were putting in the
Yeah, I would not want to be the guy that has to torture test that had to torture test this vehicle. That must have been fucking miserable having to do all that. Especially the potholes one. I mean, I know if I hit a small pothole, I'm cringing up a storm. Well, you do that in a Humvee, and a Humvee would actually fall apart. Like in respect to this kind of torture testing, these mail trucks are probably built tougher than the Humvees are, honestly. Because I don't think a Humvee would last would survive a test like that. Realistically, I don't think it would.
Cavalier and the trailer park Ferrari back in the day. I mean, the Pontiac Fiero. Don't laugh, the Pontiac Fiero was high-class white trash, okay? The only thing cooler than that when I was growing up was the 2002 Dale Earnhardt Edition Monte Carlo. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. The main problem with the LLV is the gas mileage, okay? Because it only gets 9 miles.
Well, maybe because the body was made out of the same material as a soda can is, and it would crumple if you breathed on it too funny. Like all the things he's talking about not breaking, that's the chassis, not the body. The body would crumple in a heartbeat. I don't know. I wouldn't trust that thing. Well, at least the Humvee had like Kevlar lining in the body. A mail truck is just an aluminum tin can, just waiting to be smooshed.
To the gallon. You have to realize this is like the biggest fleet of vehicles that the United States has. There's over 140,000 of these things, meaning that for every single penny that gas prices go up, the US Postal Service has to spend an additional $8 million on fuel alone. And this is the part where you're like, oh, America's capital.
Where am I wrong? Kevlar was added later. Well, the Humvees that I'm thinking of, I'm thinking of had a layer of Kevlar in the body, and like the doors were like solid steel. And I think there was a thin layer of Kevlar on the hood, I think. Okay, maybe that's one thing. Okay. Maybe that's one of I may be mixing up the models, perhaps. I mean, I do know like the sides are like solid steel, and they could maybe stop like I think they could maybe resist small arms fire, not rifles, but like handguns. But that'd be about it. I thought the one that I was thinking of had like the hood had a layer of a thin layer of Kevlar underneath the plastic top coating. But again, maybe I'm thinking of a different model. Which is entirely possible. I could be thinking of a different model. Because God knows there's so many of them, it's easy to get them mixed up.
That's fine. That's the cost of doing business. Just raise the prices of your services and it's covered. It's no big deal. You would think that, but remember, the U.S. Postal Service is a government-regulated monopoly, meaning that anytime they want to change their pricing, the government has to sign off on it, and the government takes forever to do anything. Another example of this would be like the power company, right? Because you can't shop around for different power providers the same way you look for like an internet service provider or a cell phone provider. You only have one power company available where you live, the same way you only have one post office available where you live. Anytime the power company wants to raise their rates, the government has to sign off on it, and it's a huge deal. Same thing applies to the Postal Service and stamps or anything else. Because of this, they can't effectively adapt and change their prices, so it's a humongous issue. So how do we solve this? Well, there's two options. You could A, get rid of the monopoly that's set in place because it's no longer effective for what it was originally supposed to do by helping the USPS, and now it's actually hindering them more than it's helping because they're no longer able to change their prices to actually be competitive. Or
which will never happen because the government will never in the history of government will they want to give up the control they have over the United States Postal Service. The fact that they've got control over the mail system means they have a level of control over the populace, so they will never, ever give up control of the Postal Service. They will run that thing into the ground before giving it up. Guarantee.
Or you could B, make them get different vehicles. And obviously, we're absolutely 100% of the time going to go with B because the US government, or any government ever really, is never ever going to give up control, and they have control over the USPS, and
there we go. What did I just say?
They're never ever going to let that go. They would rather see that thing burn to the ground than give up control over it. So, obviously,
almost word for word. We're here. Yeah, we're me and him. We're on the same wavelength here.
the USPS is getting new vehicles. But then that bites the US Postal Service in the ass because remember, they're a government agency and they can't just like go to Toyota and be like, hey, Toyota, that new truck that you guys just came out with that's $10,000 and really cool, can we buy a bunch of those for fleet vehicles? No, they can't do that. They have to figure out the specs they want, then they have to send that out and let all these defense contractors bid on them, and then after they bid, they have to give the defense contractors millions of dollars so that they can develop the new vehicle, so they're going to pay for all the R&D up front. And then when Oshkosh Defense wins the bid with this fucking thing that looks like it was animated by Pixar, the other company that they beat is going to turn around and file a lawsuit and sue because they're saying that it wasn't a fair enough competition, despite the fact that the US taxpayers literally gave them all the money for R&D in the first place. And then that's going to delay the whole project more, and then bottom line, it's going to take 20 fucking years to fix the issue. The entire time the US Postal Service is struggling and trying to figure shit out while the government refuses to let them actually do their job and be fucking competitive. And it just sucks because the US Postal Service is sacred. There's nothing more sacred to society than the mailman. All I wanted to do was have a happy, lighthearted video because I thought it was funny that Northrop
Six, what is considered the first generation Humvee? Is there a date that stipulates what is considered the first generation Humvee? Because what I'm thinking of may not be first generation.
Grumman was making mail trucks, and now, after researching it, I'm gonna get upset every time I watch my mail lady deliver the mail because I'm gonna recognize that she's wearing a parka and overalls inside of her vehicle because the heater barely works, because she's driving a 40-year-old mail truck that's a piece of shit, because the government fucks up everything they even get near touching. So in conclusion, I guess that's the story of why mail trucks are made by defense contractors, and if you're a mail carrier, I've always appreciated you, but I'm gonna be honest, I have another level of appreciation for what you do because I truly, genuinely had no idea the levels of bureaucratic bullshit that you had to hurdle on your way to get mail into my mailbox. So thank you. Seriously, thank you. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch over thefatelectrician.com. Quack bang, out.
Loudly.
You know, the more history I read, the less I trust the government. And maybe, just maybe, that's why in the American education system, they emphasize math and science and English way more than they emphasize history.
Okay.